stimulus bill under Obama, that had three big headline projects for reinvestment. It had high-speed rail, it had smart grid, and it had a nationwide system of interoperable health records.
I remember those days.
Yeah, 0 for 3.
Yeah.
At some point, we got to be upset about this, you know?
Hey, now, Gavin Newsom, please don't copyright me. Jon Stewart, please don't copyright me, guys. I'm just trying to give commentary on things that I believe the American people need to hear from a different perspective. So you saw from the intro, I started off with Ezra Klein explaining how it feels to be a Democrat in under 30 seconds. Ezra Klein, the stimulus bill under Obama had three big headline projects for reinvestment: high-speed rail, smart grid, and a nationwide system of interoperable healthcare records. 0 for 3. Gavin Newsom come out with excuses. And this is the point where I start talking about, I have a video on my channel. I think it's how I became a conservative. And one of the reasons why I didn't become a conservative because of social stuff, even though I do agree a lot with conservatives about, I believe our society should be opinionated about how citizens should conduct themselves in society. I do believe with that. I do agree with conservatives on that. But the biggest reason why I ended up becoming a conservative is that conservatives tend to look at the results of a policy, not the intentions of a policy. Liberals love to put out the intention of a policy. Look, we have all this money to invest in high-speed rail, smart grid, and a nationwide system of interoperable health records. But what's the result? We didn't complete none of those. So what happened to the money? Oh, we spent it, we wasted it, or it got used for something else. So you scammed me. Oh, no, we didn't scam you. We just didn't use the money yet. We still have the money appropriated, but it's just we didn't start the process yet. But it's been damn near 12 years. Obama was president 2020, 2008, 2012 even. And it took you 12 years plus and you still haven't gotten any of these things done? But look at how much we invested in infrastructure. That is the amount that Democratic promises ended up with. This is why I didn't fall for Kamala Harris' little stitch about we're going to spend billions of dollars in affordable housing. Yeah. Okay, same way you did with high-speed rail, huh? And this is a stigma that if you are paying attention, if you're not an ignorant voter, you know this is a weakness of the Democratic Party. Democrats love to pretend that they're good at governing. They're not good at governing. I'm sorry, you're not good at governing. Democrats are not good at governing. They need to create all these taxes. The reason why liberal states tend to be so expensive to live in is because they need to tax you for every damn thing. They need to tax you because you took a plastic bag. They need to tax you because you live in their district, you live in their city, you live in their state. Because of the fact that they're so wasteful, they're so ineffective with resource management that they need to pull more resources out of the population. And you see why a lot of them are losing population numbers. Because end of the day, Democrats can sit here and pretend and do this show about, oh, look, we know how to govern. No, you don't. You pretend you know how to govern. But look at the results. People are fleeing your states. They're going to red states. Why? Because end of the day, you can ignore reality, Democrats, but you can't ignore the consequences of reality. Now, here's my clip that I showed you of Ezra talking to Jon Stewart about this stuff and how it creates this kind of association with Democrats that they're the real liars, right? Everything they claim that the Republicans are is an admission of what they are. Look at this clip and tell me that you don't come to the same conclusion as I do. Let's take a look.
They didn't want to just build it, Ezra. They wanted it back better.
Maybe. Oh, wow. Man, that's there's something about throwing me back to that moment that hurts at this moment, right? Like the optimism, it was a simpler time.
It was a simpler time. Yeah, but you make the point in the book, which I think is really interesting, that moment of optimism actually crystallized in some ways the failure.
Yes.
And you make it very stark in terms of, for instance, the Chargers, which I think is a great example.
So liberals passed $7.5 billion for a nationwide network of electric vehicle chargers. We also get $42 billion, and this is a big thing they tout a lot, to do rural broadband. There's a lot of parts of this country that are not hooked up to broadband. And in both cases, and these were passed early in the administration, particularly the rural broadband money, by the end of the administration, by the election, by the time I'm fact-checking the book, they just have not happened. And you look into why, and we did look into why, and what you get are these incredibly baroque internal processes. I'll focus on rural broadband for a minute here, because that one was a good idea.
Still a good idea.
And they liked it. Like, that was the one they went around when they talked about the infrastructure bill. They were like, roads and rural broadband, right? And if you look into what happened, you end up having is a 14-stage process. Like, there's a period where the Commerce Department needs to draw up a map of which parts of the country don't have the right amount of broadband. And then there's a challenge period on the map, and da-da-da-da, and da-da-da-da. And 56 states and jurisdictions try to apply for this money. And again, this passes at the end of 2021. They have time. By the end of 2024, 3 have gotten to the end of the process. They were trying.
Three of these 56.
Yes.
End of the process, meaning they've actioned it, they've built it, or they've
No, of course not. I didn't mean they built it, Sean.
Oh.
Sorry, I confused you.
Oh, dear
They just
God.
got to the point where, in theory, they could get the money to build
They
it.
had been approved for the money.
Yes. Yes, basically.
And then we get to the last part of my video where we'll go into more in depth in their conversation about the downfalls of about the Democratic Party. Right? And this is some of the stuff that Gavin Newsom is going to have problems struggling with. And the funny part about this interview too is Gavin Newsom talks as if he's not the governor of California. It's hilarious. Let's take a look.
And so the thing that I began thinking a lot about was that there is something liberalism is good at and knows how to look for, which is where can we subsidize something that people need? But there's something liberalism is bad at because it doesn't know how to look for it, which is how do we create more? How do we make it possible to build more of things people need? And not only are we not,
AKA make it practical. And this is something conservatives, because this is why conservatives are always perceived as bad, and liberals love to play into this narrative that conservatives are like heartless people that don't care about stuff, right? We go, hey, conservative, our resources are finite. You can't just import 28 million people into our country and not expect negative things to happen. Liberals, we are wealthy enough we got $6 trillion. We can manage that. No, you can't. No, you can't, because then these illegals come in, they can't maintain themselves properly, and they have to go on what? Government benefits, which is already strained at this point. And you're adding more pressure to those systems, right? Conservatives get the bad rap because they're practical. No one loves a practical person. When you're trying to have fun, when you're trying to justify emotional stuff, like we can give everyone free health care. The conservatives come in and said, well, technically, we can't afford free health care in the United States of America. We'll have to tax everybody 60% of their income to do that, not just tax the rich. Because the taxing the rich, based on whatever income bracket you go with, the bottom 50% of Americans do not pay any taxes. And if they do, is amount to about 10% of the government budget. That means the top 50% of Americans pay all the damn taxes, at least 90% of the taxes. So you're saying that we should take more money from them? It's not going to work. And especially in that top 50 of Americans that pay 90% of the taxes, the rich by themselves, the top 1% of taxpayers, they pay about what, 40% of the money? And you want them to, if you tax the rich 100%, it still wouldn't account for all our budget needs that we need for free healthcare, because we have 490 million people approximately living in the United States of America. And you think adding more immigrants, more illegals who are incapable of maintaining themselves in this country, who's going to more than likely, more than half of illegal immigrants that come into this country end up on some type of government welfare system, you think that we can manage and take care of that? It's impractical. And this is the attitude that many Americans are taking, because we're no longer allowing liberals to gaslight us into doing something impractical. And I think this is where liberalism loses, in my opinion. Let me hear yours in the comment section.
good at pursuing that, we don't even realize how often we are getting in the way of it, how often we are the problem. There is, I think, something bracing as a liberal about asking this question of why in the places where people who agree with me govern, you and I don't think have that different politics, aren't the outcomes what I want to see? Why can't I go say to the Texans or the Floridians, no. You just have to do our policies from California.
Right.
And that's the thing I'm grappling with here.
No, and I appreciate that. And we'll get to that question because I think it's a fundamental question. And it's interesting what you sort of define from that prism that's important, because what people are actually looking for isn't necessarily what you are identifying specifically. I would challenge.
This is what people are looking for. I want good outcomes. I want results. The same way corporate America evaluates all of us. Like if you work a job, you know your employer is not paying you money just because he cares about you and loves you and likes you. He pays you a salary because you give him good outcomes. And all Americans are saying it's time to put the government in that position as well. It's not enough to be like, oh, look, I tried. Well, I don't give you $2 billion to try to build broadband internet. I give you $2 billion to build broadband internet. And if you don't give me the outcomes that was promised to me, you deserve to lose your funding. You deserve to lose an apartment sometimes, and you deserve to lose power. And this is the proposition America has put in the prism through Donald Trump that it seems like many liberals don't seem to understand. I think I can see it because I'm more independent. I'm more in the center than I care to admit. Like, even though I feel like I am a conservative, I feel like I'm more in the middle. This is why I can see it. I can see it as, hey, you made a promise, build back better. This is Joe Biden's promise. He wasn't able to keep it. You're fired. Just like you, hey, I paid you to do a certain job. You didn't do the job good. You're fired. It's very simple stuff. But Democrats, they have to complicate it because in reality, what they're trying to do is not trying to take accountability for their own failings. And I like this guy, this liberal guy, Ezra. I feel like his heart's in the right place, but I still feel like he still has some type, his bias still doesn't let him see clearly what is going on, that his party is not effective.
Challenge as the problem. That said, what you identify as a problem, I completely agree with that. I was going back to my speech, my first speech as governor of the state of California. It might have
It's
been
quoted
ripped
in
from
here.
these pages. Yeah, literally said if you can build a sports stadium with these new rules and fast track a judicial process and what we refer to, and we'll get to CEQA, our California rules that go back to quite literally Ronald Reagan in 1970 as it relates to environmental review. It should work for homelessness. It should work for housing. And I announced that day an effort to sue up to 47 cities. We started with one, Huntington Beach, California. Doesn't make you popular as governor to announce a lawsuit against your city because they weren't meeting their zoning requirements under our housing element. So much of that, again, reflected.
But this is the problem. You're creating an unnecessary process for what? What's the purpose? Like, what's the practical purpose of doing that? Oh, we want to protect the environment. Okay, that sounds more like an emotional reason. What is the objective there? What is the practicality there? And this is why they always fail to execute. This is why they can't do anything. Everything's always this emotional gaslighting. It's all about, oh, we want to be in your business because we know best. We know what's best for you. That's the liberal incentive structure in liberalism. The incentive structure in the political ideology of liberals is to pretend that they know more, they know what's best for you. When in reality, you don't know what's best for people. And this is why you fail at governing, because you don't listen to people you govern. You have an idea that, hey, this is how people should act. This is how people should be. This is how things should be because we care about the government. Oh, you should care about these things. People say we don't care about this stuff. We care about this. And you're not effective at the things that people actually care about. And this is why people leave your state, right? And then the funny part is liberals like Gavin Newsom, since they live in since they take over these states and these cities, there's no consequences for being wrong because the liberal, their number one problem is they don't know how to hold themselves and their political side accountable. But they pretend Republicans have this problem. Republicans don't have this problem. When Liz Cheney does something that we don't like as Republicans, she gets voted out. If a Democrat does something that Democrats don't like, they still win. Stephen A. Smith is the best example of this. He had all kinds of criticisms for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and what he said, I'm voting for them because they're better statesmen. That's what he said, based on emotional reasons. And then you wonder why, hey, how come my feelings doesn't affect reality? Because at the end of the day, your feelings doesn't do anything. Your feelings don't work for you. Like, this is the problem with liberals. Your feelings don't do nothing. Your feelings don't produce anything in reality. They only affect you. But when it's time to get stuff done, sometimes your feelings get in the way. And this is what's happening with liberal governance.
In this friction and your own reflected frustration and lived experience in the state of California. But my point is this, as a practitioner, it's a very different reality. Mm-hmm. But what you identify, I completely embrace. These labyrinths of rules, federal rules, state rules, absolutely. Localism, though, and I want to talk about that. Localism is determinative. And you pick on, understandably, San Francisco.
Localism is fine. I don't want to review this video too long because I'm gonna get copyrighted by these guys if I play their stuff too long. But I want to skip ahead just a little bit. Hopefully they get to the point that I want to kind of highlight here. But localism, the reason why it's so effective is that people can vote with their feet. They can say, hey, look, how California does these things this way. Look at the outcomes it produced. Florida's doing this way. Florida's thinking about removing property taxes out of the state. Oh my God, how are they able to do that? Oh, they have surpluses every year. California don't have surpluses every year. They do some years. They don't have it every year. Florida, since Jeff Bush, surplus every single year. So they can afford to not need to take property taxes from their citizens to keep the system running. They're thinking about doing that. If California thinks about removing property taxes out of their state, that state will go bankrupt. That's the difference. People are starting to notice. Because at the end of the day, you can sit here, you can gel up your hair, you can look like you're morally more virtuous than Donald Trump. But Donald Trump goes, I'm just a guy, but I give you better results than they do. They're just brown nosers that can't do their job. That's why they got to kiss your butt. Me, I know I can do my job. I don't have to kiss your butt because I know I'm valuable. That's the proposition Americans find out, right? Just like at work, the guy that always kissing up to the boss, he don't really do his job that good. And the people that actually do the job good, they don't kiss up to their boss. Donald Trump is literally the same dynamic, simplified. But I digress. I want to hear this clip.
Let me flip this, because to shadow box around the fact that you know more about California governance than I ever will in 1,000 years of doing this would be ridiculous. Why is it easier to build homes in Texas and California?
They have, you established that in the book. In Houston, you make the point, I think it was 70,000 permits in 2023, just 7,500 in a much smaller city, San Francisco, but understandable contrast.
But a city with more demand.
More demand, and it's simply because they have no zoning. They have land use considerations.
But Austin has zoning.
Yeah, but not Houston in the context of that frame.
The thing I'm getting at here, which I really would like the thing you just said, right, about localism, it's so important. And like, this is so much the conversation I'd love for us to have here, because the texture that you have been grappling with of why do things that you want to have happen not happen is, I think, a really interesting thing to add to it. But when you're saying, well, is this really a problem for liberals? It's easier to build in Texas and Florida than not just in California, but in California or New York. Right. The cost of living crisis is worse in blue states. And a little bit of that is blue states are a place a lot of people want to live. But you should be able to, in places where you're governing for the working class, in theory.
And your point is a point, and just to level set, so people listening, I completely agree. This notion of the supply-demand imbalance. I mean, you're making an Econ 101 argument. And that supply-demand imbalance is next level in the state of California. We're simply not building enough.
I mean, maybe, it's a super huge state, but they're in decline. Like, you're about to lose electoral college seats. You're about to lose congressional seats because you're losing population. Florida's about to gain congressional seats. Like, right now, I've been a native Floridian all my life. I've been born and raised in Florida, probably will die in Florida. And the cost of living is insane. Like, I have to move from where I grew up at because of the fact that it's in a high demand area. I used to live in South Florida. And as you know now, it's hard to live there because of supply and demand. And even then, Florida, a city in demand, is still cheaper than California, a city that is losing population. So the trend is coming. Like, we're looking 10 years down the line, we may see this as a turning point in how California lost its status as being the biggest state in the union. So, hey, this seems like a coping session with me, but I think the reality here is that liberals do a whole lot of talking, but they can't really back it up, right? Oh, we could give everyone free healthcare. Then you ask them the practical question, okay, you have a finite amount of resources. How can you give an outcome where it's more expensive to do said thing here in the United States than compared to Europe? Oh, look, Europeans are healthy because of free healthcare. No, it's not. Europeans are healthy. That's why they can do free healthcare, because healthy people uses insurance less frequently than unhealthy people. Duh, Kenny. Okay, when you have a country that's damn near have what? We have a 46% obesity rate amongst adults. It'll be more expensive to insure those people. This is why a lot of these people complain about how healthcare is so expensive. But if you're a healthy person, healthcare is not as expensive. But because of Medicare, because of Obamacare, because of these things that Democrats try to do, they made healthcare expensive for everybody because they don't want no discrimination. But we don't have equal outcomes. Like, this is the problem with the liberals. Like, they believe in emotional crap like this, equal outcomes. If I take care of myself, if I eat healthy, I'm less prone to get sick than you who eat cheeseburger every other Sunday. And when you go to the hospital more frequently than I do, you're more at risk for a health insurance, and that's why it's more expensive for unhealthy people or people with pre-existing conditions to have higher healthcare costs. Now, my argument is if we privatize this stuff, it'll be relatively cheap like we have with car insurance. Car insurance can still be expensive, but many people can manage to pay for it. I want healthcare to be the same thing. I feel like it's a problem that healthcare is attached to your employment status, while your car insurance isn't. Right? I think that's a model that we should be trying to incorporate. I want cheap healthcare, not free healthcare. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How you feel about this conversation? What's your thoughts and perspective about Gavin Newsom being kind of confronted by the results of liberal, progressive governance? I'd like to hear your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.